Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Raising the Bar on Product Integrity, a Modern Cold Storage Solution for Therapeutics. Thank you for attending, and a special thank you to our panelists for participating in today's event. We understand that your time is valuable and we're glad to have you with us. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. First, today's event will be about an hour long and we will be recording it. We will email you a link to the archived recording so you can view the presentation again later if you'd like, or share it with a colleague. Please disable any pop-up blockers to ensure you have no trouble viewing the slides or links in today's web event. This is an interactive event, so feel free to submit questions to our speakers using the chat box on your screen. If you would like to enlarge the slides, you may do so by dragging the corner of the box. This function allows you to make them larger or smaller. All the widgets are also resizable and movable, so feel free to move them around to get the most out of your desktop space. Please also take a moment to visit our Resource Center. The box is on your console. Here you can access a number of resources that you might find helpful. If you have any technical difficulties during the webinar that I haven't covered, clear your cache and refresh your link. If that doesn't work, please feel free to reach out using the Q&A box. Finally, at the end of this event, we will present you with a survey. Please take a few minutes to fill it out and let us know your thoughts on today's event. And now I'd like to introduce myself. My name is April Hollis, and I am the Custom Content Editor for Healthcare and Life Sciences at SmartBrief. I'll be moderating today's event, and we have a great discussion planned. Today's webinar will cover current needs and challenges in cold storage for therapeutics, the root cause of temperature excursions and how new solution designs can help prevent them, how to optimize processes and maintain equipment reliability in new therapeutic development, how modern cold storage solutions can help organizations raise the bar on sustainability, and what success looks like for researchers and manufacturers. To start, let's meet our panelists. On the panel today, we have Scott Masella, Portfolio Leader at FARRAR. Scott is responsible for cold storage equipment ranging from controlled rate chambers to ultra-low temperature storage freezers. As part of Train Technologies, he embraces the Gigaton Challenge, an initiative aimed to reduce the world's carbon emissions 1 gigaton by 2023. With more than 20 years of industry experience holding positions of progressive responsibility over the course of his career, Scott has traveled internationally to understand the needs, concerns, and problems that confront biological precise climate storage, and has collaborated with numerous teams to provide cutting-edge solutions that contribute to achieving their sustainability goals. Scott holds a BS in Mechanical Engineering from Tufts University in Boston. We also have Mitch Donnelly, Engineering Leader for New Product Development at FARRAR. Mitch brings over 15 years of engineering experience from both the commercial HVAC and life sciences industries. Over his career, Mitch has paired engineering expertise with deep industry understanding to deliver equipment and solutions that effectively meet customer needs and aid in solving industry challenges. Mitch has held a variety of positions throughout his tenure, ranging from controls productivity leader to electrical engineering manager, each with a progressive level of responsibility and a focus on developing and maintaining solutions that offer improved sustainability and energy efficiency. Mitch holds a BS in electrical engineering from Marquette University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and an MBA from the University of Manchester and Indiana University. Thank you so much for joining us, Scott and Mitch. To kick off the discussion, let's consider how Operation Warp Speed to address COVID with novel new vaccines dramatically accelerated biologic drug development focus into the here and now, rather than the 7 to 10 runway that was trending back in 2018. How have biologic drug manufacturing needs changed with respect to cold storage equipment? Scott, let's start with you.
Sure, thank you. Number one, before the pandemic, biologic drug manufacturing was done in really small batches, working on drugs that perhaps were not mainstream for mainstream issues, and we're working on smaller freezing applications and storing applications where standard lab grade or equipment you might find in a lab or a research area or a biobank might be found. Now, with the large volumes of material that happen to be getting made for whether it's a drug for a therapy for cancer, or whether it's a COVID vaccine or a flu vaccine, the volumes are much, much greater, leading to a lot of challenges with that type of equipment that was made for small heat loads to remove it and infrequent access of the chamber, meaning you're going in and out of the space maybe once a day or twice a day. You're not looking at trying to get through it multiple times a day or in a shift. Finally, there's a need for flexibility and temperature. Those devices were typically designed for use to be at -20, which is a typical freezer that you might find in your house. Might be used at -70 and -80, which would be dry ice. And now, or to a lesser extent, -30, 35, which was blood plasma. And now you're starting to see -40, -50, even -60s as the industry fine tunes the need for high efficacy and high yields with standard new standard temperature storage that would be different and difficult for those standard older type equipment to be used.
Yeah, those sound like some pretty significant changes. Mitch, what would you add?
Yeah, I think kind of to echo what Scott was saying, we saw a lot of changes in the rapid development of drugs. So that required larger freezers, more storage capability. It also required higher performing machines, machines that could recover faster, have better uniformity, and respond to the more frequent door openings that were being used without the process throughout the pandemic and as drugs were rapidly developed. One other area that we really saw was the flexibility on the temperature. We had a few customers approach us around being able to, they weren't sure if their drug was going to be a -80 or if it was going to be refrigerated. So having the ability to go from like refrigerated temps to -20 to -80 all within one product was very beneficial for them. So it's just kind of a change in how equipment was looked at from the manufacturing process and how we as a company can help solve those technical problems.
Yeah, I know it hasn't always been simple for manufacturers to respond to these shifts. So Scott, can you tell us about some of the challenges and roadblocks to meeting their current needs?
Yeah, number one, the biggest challenge is the equipment costs. They're not really prioritized over other processing equipment. When you look at what's happening today in manufacturing operations, there's investment going into bioreactors, investment going into fill, there's investment going into the types of storage vessels that the bulk drugs are being stored in, and there's even investment going into fill and finish. But what is pretty common throughout all of the processes that happened pre-pandemic and now has been the same storage, cold storage equipment that we've noticed has been a big bottleneck in process improvement and process efficiencies. So those systems are typically designed with light utilization, like we were just talking about, with limited door openings and limited availability and capability of pulling that material down. So typically after you fill it into a bottle or a bag, you place it into a freezer where you're trying to pull it down to a particular temperature to stop biologic activity. That requires a ton of heat to be removed out of that bottle, heat that wasn't designed to be removed by the types of equipment that are being used. And that leads to what I had said before around misapplication of typical lab equipment, which is used to hold and store material at a particular temperature, but not pull it down. It just be kind of like using a beach cooler at the beach with your warm beer and you throw it in. It's not really a great idea because your ice is going to be water pretty quickly. It wasn't what it was designed to do. You want to put cold beer into your beach cooler with ice already in it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And now digging a little deeper, Mitch, can you tell us about some of the design challenges that make it difficult to address their needs?
Yeah, I think if we think about current technologies and refrigerants, compressors, heat exchangers, all the refrigeration system components that go into the system, they're typically designed or developed around two different key principles. One is either delivering high energy efficiency or one is delivering performance. And so we have two kind of competing metrics in terms of how we're going to design our equipment. It's around, can we make it the most energy efficient? Well, then that trades off for performance. Your performance is what allows you to have tight uniformity. It's what allows you to have the recovery of the machine from a door opening. It's what also allows you to have excess capacity in the system to be able to do the things like Scott was talking about, where you bring warm product into it and be able to freeze it reliably without risking damage of your equipment. So I really think we have kind of a couple competing technical aspects here around energy efficiency and performance. And as an equipment manufacturer working through with our customers, we have to decide which one is the most important. We're always going to be pushed to improve our energy efficiency, and we're always looking for new technologies to be able to do that, but that's going to be the challenge for us moving forward.
All right, thank you. And Mitch, can you now give us an idea of some of the common use cases for cold storage equipment in biologic drug discovery and manufacturing?
Yeah, so typically what we had been seeing was product being stored in upright or chest freezers if it's minus 30 or colder. May also be in a walk-in room at some of the temperatures that are minus 30 and warmer, depending on size of storage that's needed. So it's generally minimal interaction with the samples. It would be going in and out just to move throughout the manufacturing process, but maybe not as rapidly as it is today. And a lot of that equipment is designed for a specific capacity. And so as we think about the capacity that's within that system, it can become a limitation of it longer term. So really it's more about equipment that is designed specifically to store and maintain the product that's being transitioned throughout the process.
Okay, and what would you say are the shortfalls of traditional or other technologies when used in those types of cases?
So if we think about that, a lot of companies are now using the same equipment that's designed just to store material to also freeze it. And so when you start doing that, the systems don't have enough capacity in them to be able to do that. So a typical, if we pick on a ULT, typical ULT has 200 to 220 watts worth of capacity from the refrigeration system, while over 60% of that is used by the cabinet just to maintain the temperature that's inside of the unit. So when you think about that, you might have about 30 to 50, maybe 50 to 80 watts of cooling. When you put a lot of warm product in there, that's not a lot. So your compressors end up running extended runtime at high speeds, which then reduces the reliability of them long term, which then ends up meaning that the equipment could fail sooner than expected. So typically the equipment's not designed to handle either warm product, excessive door openings, because that also translates to a bunch of heat transfer from the exterior of the cabinet into the interior of the cabinet. And then just the dramatic change of load if you put warm product in when you've already frozen down the freezer, that has a big impact to its operating efficiency.
Thank you. And I know that in addition to equipment failures, temperature excursions can be a big problem for the industry. What kinds of activities lead to temperature excursions?
Yeah, so typically your freezer can just fail. I mean, obviously all equipment has the ability to just have some type of reliability problem with it. But usually it coming back to if you're opening the door more frequently or not allowing the freezer to recover from those door openings, or it takes too long to recover, when you put warm product into it, that will typically take your freezer or refrigerator out of whatever temperature range it was meant to be set at until it's able to pull back down into the correct operating point. If you have warm ambient conditions or high humidity, humidity can lead to ice buildup inside of the freezer, but high ambient also makes the refrigeration system have to work harder. It's not as easy for it to reject its overall heat out of the system, and so it's working harder and may not be able to maintain temperature depending on how it was designed. And then if you get into overall design of the cabinet, if the cabinet's not designed very well, or there's lots of gaps or seams, or maybe it's poorly manufactured, that can lead to air infiltration into the freezer, which then impacts the temperature uniformity within inside the product.
All right, Scott, would you add anything?
You know, the one thing that I would add is that as you're pulling material down, you're adding a tremendous amount of heat into the space. And when you open the door, same thing. The air that's inside of that freezer can be upwards of 100 degrees Celsius different on the inside than the outside. When that happens, the air is very heavy and falls out of the freezer. You don't often see that in the chest, hence that configuration, but you still have recovery issues at any upright. And so being able to recondition that space again after opening the door or inserting warm product is the biggest challenge of any cold storage equipment. So, as Mitch pointed out, that usually taxes the compressors, unless you've designed it appropriately to do that. And oftentimes when you do design it appropriately for that, you have general energy consumption issues, meaning it's too high because you have too much capability during steady state operations. So the trick is being able to blend the two.
All right. And now when there are these temperature excursions, what are some of the consequences?
So some of the consequences are leading to the best way I can put this. You have to adjudicate every one of those alarms. And in order to do that, in some cases, customers may say that costs them about $1,500 US each and every time they have to look at whether or not that temperature excursion led to a problem with the drugs or samples that they have inside, and if so, then that sets back the material or that particular study, however costly and time it may take. And if it's not, then that time frame typically adds another detail and customer use. I'm trying to think of the right word I want to search for here. Added time and effort and manpower in order to be able to manage all of that happens. In some cases, people will average about 1,000 to 1,500 problems or door opening issues a year that they have to adjudicate. So that can be pretty costly.
Sound like some pretty significant consequences. Thank you. Now, before we go any further, audience members, we'd like to hear from you with this poll question. How long is the typical lifespan of a ULT freezer in your facility? A, 3 years or less. B, less than 7 years. C, less than 10 years. Or D, more than 10 years. And while the results are populating, Scott, what lifespan do you typically see for ULTs in your experience?
That's a good question. And so I often see, depending on the customer's use case, I'll see D, 10 plus years. That's usually what I find in an academic environment, exactly what we had talked about earlier, where it's very infrequent access. The unit is running, just holding materials ready for use in the next time they want to investigate whatever sample they have. So when they say infrequent use, you're talking about opening the door maybe once or twice every couple of weeks. And then I've seen at that top side, 3 years or less. If you're opening the door 6 and 7 times in a shift, meaning like 8 or 9 hours, that's excessive opening of the door. And if you're adding warm product to it or rapidly changing material in and out and having air exchanges, you're overtaxing those compressors, and you'll see replacements in 3 years or less.
All right, let's take a look at our poll results. And it looks like the majority said more than 10 years. And
that's
Scott
great.
expected.
Glad that they're using it. It tells me they're using their equipment properly. If you can get that much time out of your equipment, that's great, because that means you're using it in the way it was intended to be designed.
All right. Well, now that we've heard from our audience, I'd like to talk about some of the ways to address the shortfalls of existing cold storage equipment, and in particular, which solutions are effective and sustainable for both freezing and storage. Mitch, let's get your thoughts.
Yeah, so I think, starting to leverage kind of existing / newer technologies around forced air convection could be one of the ways to address the shortfalls of some of the existing equipment. The system that's kind of shown here is one of our ULC 190 chambers, where we're forcing air down -20 to -80 and moving it uniformly throughout the freezer to move the energy from the air every cubic inch of that freezer. We've seen that helps by forcing air through the freezer, we've seen that helps with the uniformity. We've seen that helps with recovering from a door opening perspective. So when you do let the air out, or warm air rushes in, the cold air falls out. When we shut the door, having the ability to force air through the system allows it to recover much, much faster. And then just from a performance standpoint, you can also then, with this system, because of the capacity that's inside of it, you're able to take warm product and put it inside of the freezer and let that come down to temperature without risking damaging the compressors or any of the refrigeration components as a part of the equipment. Other ways outside of just changing your equipment would be to have well-designed processes for the use of your equipment. But from my perspective, I think it's better to have equipment that works for how you want to run your process versus setting up the process to work for the equipment. And so anything we can do to make the equipment work in a manner that works better for the manufacturer, that's what we'll try to go do.
Yeah, I'm sure they will appreciate that. And Scott, what would you say makes forced air convection ideal for both drug discovery and manufacturing?
Well, number one, when you have forced air convection, as you can see in this picture, the air is moving rapidly around the chamber, which leads to tight uniformity around all of aspects and all corners, top, bottom, front, and back of the chamber. What this does is allows you to really accelerate your time to market by not having to worry about whether or not your drug candidate has temperature excursion issues and leads to efficacy issues. So if you have a spec that you wanted to hold it at -70, a chamber like this will be able to keep you within a degree of that temperature to know that you're going to have solid results and stability from your drug. The other piece that it does is allow you to have a quick door recovery. When you think about forcing the air into the space and have it already be temperature conditioned, you're also pulling the heat out of it quickly. That allows you to minimize what we call micro warm-ups, which are aspects that lead to drugs and samples and materials to have efficacy and efficacy issues. That's also otherwise known as transient warming conditions and transient warming effect. So that's another way of looking at what that could be. The final piece is the reliability, allowing you to have the ability to quickly make repairs to the chamber or repairs to the refrigeration system, allow you to keep your materials in the chamber while you make those repairs, because you have a packaged refrigeration system. When you have other cold wall type equipment, the refrigeration system and the chamber are interrelated, interacted. So you have to pull the materials out in order to move it to another chamber so you can make those repairs.
Great. And how does forced air convection compare to the natural convection used in traditional cold storage technologies?
Well, first off, looking at this is the benefits. You get your tight uniformity that we talked about. That allows you to have the faster processes in drug discovery and minimizing our transient warming that we just talked about. The faster recovery from door openings, for sure. And when you have those fast recoveries from door openings, you also get the opportunity to reduce those cryo concentrations during material pull down because you have that excess cooling capacity. And that when I say reducing cryo concentrations, what I mean is as you freeze, the water in the substance will freeze first. And if you're freezing slowly, water, as everybody knows, freezes at 0 degrees. But the proteins and the other materials that are inside the bulk drug substance take longer to freeze or may not freeze completely. They're just suspended. So if you give them the opportunity to migrate and move, then you're going to concentrate all of the material in one location, which could damage it and lead to yield problems.
Thank you for explaining that. So when you're evaluating customer processes that involve cold storage systems, What do you recommend they investigate besides just the equipment to ensure their needs will be met?
Well, first of all, there's a place for both types of equipment. There's a reason that FARRAR has forced air and natural convection tools and products in our portfolio. So the number one is to choose the right tool for the job. It's pretty common. The questions we typically ask are, what are you doing? What's your process look like? Do you need to cool material that's already that's at temperature already, and you're not going to access the material very often? Okay, natural convection type solution like a cold wall freezer would be good. Oh, but you're going to use it for pulling material down, or you're going to frequently access the chamber because it's part of a key process, either in logistics where you're moving material in and out for clinical trials, or you're moving bulk drug substance in, you're pulling it out in different stages to move it on through for final fill and finishing. Then you want to have something that can recover quickly and have the ability to have pull down capability and fast door recoveries. So you may also have requirements in your GMP that you might need to have tight temperature uniformity. Having that forced air convection circulating material around will also help you achieve that much easier, so you can pass validation quickly in your process. And then the final thing that I would say there is just that you have faster door recoveries. Again, just talking about that if you need it.
Thank you. It'd be great to hear about some case studies. Can you talk through some examples of forced air convection cooling in action?
Sure. Number one, when we've worked with clinical trial logistics companies, often what happens in clinical phase 1 and 2 trials, those drugs for biologics are typically still at minus 70 degrees, at least, sometimes minus 80 storage temperature. So they haven't validated that temperature down into the refrigerated space or maybe the minus 20 freezer space. So what happens there is because you don't know how stable that drug is, the most difficult part is handling that drug so that you limit its time in ambient environments until you absolutely need it. And so in some cases, companies will be limited to 10 seconds for a door opening. So you have to plan your route, is what I always call it. Open the door, grab the material, pull it out, move it to, as you see it even in this picture, it's a good idea. You pull it into like a dry ice bin, and then you move it on to shipping. What happens in a lot of cases in these logistics is that when you open an standard upright cold wall freezer, you now don't have access to that freezer again for maybe an hour and a half, maybe even 2 hours. So you need to have, so often what you'll find is they'll use chest freezers for that application, or they'll use what you see here, the FARRAR ULC. The chest freezers allow you to have that faster recovery because the cold air doesn't fall out of the door, but it also takes up a lot of floor space for the amount of storage it has. So it leads to space problems for a lot of the companies. So you have to pick what's more, which is important: recovery time, product safety, or do you have to have a giant warehouse to accommodate types of equipment you might want to use? So that's the first case. The second case is similar in nature. Pharmaceutical company shipping COVID vaccines. They've had to load, they have a bank of freezers, ULT freezers. All of them are maybe a third filled, or maybe at most a half filled. And the reason they're done that way is so that they can frequently access the chamber so they can distribute the materials as needed. When that happens, again, you have a lot of space, a lot of excess energy consumption, a lot of excess HVAC load on the warehouse from the heat generated by the equipment, and not a lot of density for storage. So being able to load material quickly into the space so you minimize your temperature excursions. And in this case, we were able to design a racking system with sliders and drawers that allowed them to load their material in 50% less time. So instead of loading box by box into a ULT multiple times, you can slide the drawers out, put them in, and pull out what you need. Yeah, and the final thing that I would say about this is it allowed higher density and reduced the amount of units and space needed to for this particular application by, I think, 75%.
All right, thank you. And just as a reminder to our audience, we will have a Q&A at the end, so feel free to submit any questions for our panelists in the Q&A box. Now, sustainability is a hot topic right now, and 19 out of every 20 pharma companies have decarbonization goals to achieve by 2030. How are companies addressing these goals beyond refrigerant choice? What other areas should they focus on to hit their target? I'll start with you.
I'll start with me. Number one, the potential for more waste when you choose the wrong cold storage solution. We saw that earlier with our poll. If you're keeping your unit for 10 years, that's great. But if you're tossing it after 3 years, it's a pretty big landfill impact. One that you don't want to, you want to make sure that you mitigate, of course.
And Mitch, what are some key areas you've seen that can have the most dramatic positive effect on decarbonization and sustainability?
Yes, a lot of times we're focused on improving our refrigerants from a GWP perspective. So looking at taking our refrigerants from 1,000 GWP down to 150 or down to, depending on charge of the unit, to less than 10 GWP, which has an impact on the total CO2e emissions. But the bigger area that typically has an impact is the electrical consumption of the unit. So if you look at the bar chart here, what we typically find is that the scope 2 emissions end up being the greater portion of the emissions from the overall unit versus the actual GWP or the refrigerant used. And that's mainly because of the way our electrical grid is set up. When you have coal and natural gas as the sources of your power, that's going to obviously offset any energy efficiency gains that we can put into the unit and or the refrigerant choice that we go use. So focusing on our energy efficiency, focusing on where our power sources come from is going to be a big improvement into what our overall emissions look like going forward. And then Scott kind of alluded to as well with our ability to reuse our cabinet. That's also a big important factor where you may end up with some pieces of equipment that when they fail, you have to scrap the whole thing versus in some of our products, you may not have to do that. You might be able to reuse the cabinet and only have to fix what you're needing to fix. So I think those are kind of two key areas.
Okay, great, thank you. And now I'd like to hear from our audience members again with this poll question. Does your organization currently account for landfilling ULTs in your sustainability position? Yes, no, or unsure. And while the audience responds, have you seen a shift in the amount of companies looking into advancements in refrigeration versus sticking with the status quo? Scott, what have you seen?
Yes, the answer to that is definitely. And the main reason behind that is just looking at the effects from the Inflation Reduction Act on the cost of clinical drugs. Even though new biologic drugs aren't affected yet, they will be affected in the next 14 to 15 years when those drugs are available to be part of that Inflation Reduction Act. And what that means is for the companies is that they have to make the product very efficiently now. It's part of their drug development and master file for the FDA in order to be most efficient when that time comes and the IRA dictates a particular price. So because of that, they're looking at where in the processes are the most inefficient areas that they can make improvements on. And that has been, of course, cold storage, a number of other areas too.
All right, let's take a look at the poll results. All right, evenly matched between yes and unsure if the organization accounts for landfilling of ULTs and sustainability positions. Mitch, what would you say about those? Is that what you expected?
I would say it's about what I expected. I think as companies move forward and coming with better stewards of the environment and focusing on where our waste goes, that'll probably shift. But I think that'll take time.
All right. Now, Scott, what are some best practices for life sciences companies when selecting a solution or partner? And what knowledge should they bring to an initial meeting?
So number one, just as this slide says, is you want a consultative approach to it. You want a partner that's going to ask, what are you doing? What are you trying to store? What are you trying to freeze? And how often you're going in and out of the space? Trying to get an understanding of your process and your current conditions. That way you can help that way the partner can definitely understand the use cases and the use patterns so that you're thinking about what steady state might look like, but also peak demand. The other areas that I would also look is understanding how products and materials flow through the facility. So is there a need and a simple improvement by making material handling part of your whole look at cold storage? Can you move material in and out of a space by only handling it one time instead of moving it box by box into the freezer and then pulling it out onto a cart to move it to the next step? Is there ways to improve that to minimize the amount of time it's out and minimize the amount of times it's touched? Looking at sustainability in mind too. Almost every partner or customer that we've worked with all has a concern about the environment. Almost everybody has a goal to be net zero. Some are in 2040, some are in 2050. The point is that there's a goal out there, and how can we achieve it? As we showed you earlier, we talked about refrigerants and we talked about energy consumption driving it down, and all of those can come from more efficient equipment, but also more efficient processes. And finally, you want to have a wide range of solutions so you can pick the right choice. Whether you need a walk-in solution for your particular product, whether you need a small reach-in, whether you need a larger ULT, it could be a number of different options. Whether you need forced air or not, you want to be able to understand and have you want the reasons why, and then you want to be able to make the right choice.
Definitely. Thank you. And now, Mitch, how do FARRAR solutions overcome current challenges and meet life science companies' needs?
Yeah, so I think kind of the first area is our product portfolio has a wide temperature range. So we have products like our ULC that can do 2 to 8 C, so refrigerated temps, and that can also be set to do -20 to -80 C from a storage standpoint at any given point. So like you can qualify it for -80, you can qualify it for 2 to 8. It only runs one temperature at a time, but like you could qualify it for any temperature required for your process. We have a controlled rate chamber that helps freeze and thaw product. So that can be used and enabled in a processing manufacturing environment where you're bringing more product to it, bringing it down to temperature quickly or rapidly with this, or controlling the flow of freezing so that it steps at a certain rate based on whatever the process is required for that particular drug substance, and then move it to long-term storage. We also have a portfolio of lab-grade refrigerators and freezers, and we do have a cold wall ULT. So just having a broad portfolio with a wide range of applications is one thing that we can help do to help our customers. The other thing that we do as a service is for some of our larger products, we offer custom material handling solutions. So we'll go through an engineer to order process and be able to customize our product to meet the needs of our customers. So if you think about like our case study where we talked about the COVID vaccine, that was a complete custom solution from a material handling standpoint to enable their process and make it work more efficiently for them. And then I think lastly, we just have a broad series of technical experts within our company that know a lot about refrigeration and cold storage that can help answer questions and work with customers to make sure they're getting the right solution for the right job.
All right, that was a great discussion. Thank you, Scott and Mitch. And now we're going to turn the questions over to our participants for our Q&A session. And audience members, if you haven't submitted a question and would like to, please go ahead and ask it now. Let's see what our first question is. What are the estimated lifespans of your units?
So estimated is 10 years.
Great. And does FARRAR have air and water-cooled options for your solutions?
We have both for our rate chambers and ULCs, and then our lab grade and ULTs are all air-cooled only.
Okay. How much clearance do you need at the top of the unit for efficient operation?
We require 12 inches on top of the unit.
Okay. Are your temperature
on that one, it's Mitch, you probably want to explain. Not only is it 12 inches, it's 12 inches so we can access for serviceability.
Sure.
That's the main reason. Not so because we have like extra needed for heat removal or something like that. It's for serviceability.
Yeah, it's probably half of that height for heat removal, and the other half is for making sure that we can service it and remove it if needed while in the field. And that's specific to the ULCs. The other products don't have the same height requirements on top of them. They'll be significantly smaller.
Okay, great. Let's see what the next question is. Are your temperature measurements following a timed door opening in a unit that is racked, stainless steel or aluminum or none?
We typically measure in multiple different styles of material handling. We use sometimes bare thermocouples, sometimes weighted thermocouples, either with, I know at minus 80, there's no NSF 456 standard, but we typically use that as the weight, just following that standard. And then we'll map in a plane. So we'll do 3 planes, top to bottom, and roughly 5 thermocouples per plane. So getting the outer edges and in the middle of the unit. And that can be done with any material handling solution inside of it. And typically our material handling is going to be done in stainless steel. That's typically what we've been using from a design perspective in order to maintain weights and making sure that the material is going to be able to hold anything that's stored inside of it.
Okay. Do you deliver worldwide? And in particular, do you offer services in New Zealand?
We do. New Zealand, I know we're dropping in units in Melbourne, Australia now, so I don't think it would be too much of a stretch to go to New Zealand. But I know that we'll have a number of units, I think it was 5, Mitch, that are being validated and installed in Melbourne in a month.
Okay. Have you had your units tested in the UK in the lab environment?
Our units are CE certified, and we also carry the UKCA certification. I don't know if we've had them specifically certified for a lab environment, but they are following the IEC 61010, which is the lab grade equipment certification standard.
All right. Oops. Next question is, do you have minus 80 degrees Celsius units that can be built in a wall and serviced from the rear side?
I think I think the answer is yes, and the reason I say I think is because I'm trying to interpret what the question means. But we have the ability for our units, our machine sections that you saw in some of the photographs, to be used in a custom application that our engineered solutions team would be able to adapt and do that. So when you see the ULC on our website, you're like, it's not really quite what we're looking for. I need to have a different application with a different access. Then yes, that team can take those machine sections and build a custom wall solution. We've done that in the past for several customers as well.
Okay, and where is the position of the control probe in a negative 80 degrees Celsius ULT?
So in our our ULC, which is our larger chamber, it's in the middle of the chamber in between the two doors. And there's one probe for each machine section. And then the machine that is running at that time is the control probe that we're using. So it's displayed out on our HMIs. For the ULT, it's, I believe, in the bottom lower middle in the back of the unit.
And I think, Mitch, the other thing that I would add there is where we put our probe for our ULC is on, if you were to look at an airflow diagram of our ULC, it's the last step before the air is returned to the evaporator to be reconditioned and sent back down. So it would be considered to be our quote unquote warmest point when you're thinking about ULT positioning, and how everybody would like to see the probe in the warmest point to make sure that it's not very cold in one location and very warm in another while it says on the screen that everything is okay. We've thought that through on the ULC side and made sure that our probe is placed in the right location so you get consistent temperature feedback.
Okay, great. Let's see what our next question is. How do you sell and service units in the EMEA, such as Belgium?
Can you repeat that question? I didn't catch it.
Yeah, how do you sell and service units in the EMEA?
So at the moment, and I say at the moment because there's always room to add, but in EMEA, what we typically do is we go through distribution. That would be your main partner. And also we work with third-party service organizations directly with our service organization to do any service or installation. We also have IQ, OQ documentation that can be performed by us or also used by a validation team in region that can validate your product as well once it's installed.
Okay, thank you. Is there a specific temperature required for the area in which many ULT units may be stored?
I think the operating ranges are labeled on our functional specs, but it's typically like 10C to 30C ambient conditions that the units are designed for.
Okay. Do you typically deploy custom solutions for securing the product containers in rate-controlled freezing, depending on if the product container is a rigid container or a flexible container?
Oh, that's a good question. I like that one a lot because and the answer, of course, is it depends. But when I think about that for a minute, we have developed sliding drawers for bags and bottles alike. But the first question we typically ask is, how many are you loading in at one time? From what are you loading it into? So I know Mitch's team has designed carts and shelves and slides specific for different applications. And in some cases, he's got bottles that are on slides, he's got bottles on carts, and he's got bottles strictly going on shelves or bottles on pallets. So the first question we ask is, what is the medium that you have and how many do you have? And then immediately following, how many are you going to pull out at a time? And that, I think, helps Mitch to determine the best solution for that particular application. I don't know, Mitch, would you like to add anything to that?
I think you covered it fairly well. I mean, this is something that we typically do for all of our products, and we usually just need to know the size of the bottle that's trying to be stored, the weight of it, and then what the customer's looking to accomplish with that, and then we can start ideating on potential solutions to improve the process.
One of the things, and the final thing that I would say there is, if your material's already frozen, for instance, let's say you've put it through our controlled rate chamber, or maybe you've already had it, maybe you use a plate freezer to freeze the material. The way that we would store it in our ULC may be tighter bottle to bottle or bag to bag than if you wanted to use the ULC to pull the material down. from temperature. Then we would want to promote more airflow, so we would have slightly more space between systems, between bottles or bags. I hope that answered the question. If not, please just submit like a follow-up question and we'll be happy to answer that.
Yes, and any questions that we don't get to today will be captured and responded to later. The next question is, does FARRAR have experience or applications in cell banking?
Yes. Oftentimes what we find in cell banking is that it wants to be at cryogenic storage temperatures, and that's where we don't have applications. But for -80 applications, yes, we do have applications and examples where we've done it with our ULC and also our rate chamber to freeze materials down to -80 and then place in liquid nitrogen. It's been like the most popular case that we've done in cells.
All right. And what is a typical temperature gradient in a -80°C freezer?
Yeah, for our ULCs, we typically see plus or minus 3 degrees Celsius uniformly throughout, and that includes the defrost cycle that our evaporator coil goes through. So pretty tight uniformity, top to bottom, left to right.
Great. Do you work with one or more compressors in a typical -80°C unit?
Our units are cascade systems, so they have 2 compressors.
Mitch, you want to talk about the compressor types because they're fundamentally different in
Sure.
the ULC than a standard unit.
Yeah, so in our ULTs, we're using reciprocating compressors, and then in our ULC, which is our larger product, we use scroll compressors. That's just because that machine has a little bit more capacity in it, and we're using different refrigerants in it than we would in our ULT. But the scrolls are a highly reliable way of, or highly reliable compressor technology that we've been leveraging for several years.
All right. And what is FARRAR doing to provide more sustainable refrigerants for the industry?
Yeah, as a company, we're backed by Trane Technologies, which is a global climate innovator. We have a lot of team members that are on committees with the EPA, or we have strategic partnerships with some of the larger refrigerant suppliers where we're working towards development of new refrigerants that are lower GWP, where something doesn't exist for the type of product and or charge limit that we require today. So we're actively involved in committees, working with the EPA, working with strategic partners to develop new refrigerant solutions, and then taking those refrigerant solutions and developing them into products for longer term.
All right, thank you. Well, that wraps up today's webinar. Thank you.
There's one more question, and I can answer that. So the question is do we have are we able to provide a unit in Belgium or elsewhere for testing? And the answer is yes. What we would probably want to do is just inquire about your processes, so we throw the right solution at you, which size chamber we have, or which size are you just trying to freeze? You want to freeze and store, or do you just want to store? So we would probably ask some basic questions, and then for sure, yes, we would be able to do that. Along with and with our demonstration units, we always come with the ability to instruct you how to use it and set it up, and give you some basic pointers, because it does behave a little bit differently than what a standard ULT would be. So we do provide some basic training as well.
Okay, great. Well, that was a very interesting discussion. Thank you to our audience for your attention today. And I'd like to reiterate our thanks to our panelists. And finally, I'd like to say a special thank you to FARRAR for making today's event possible. This concludes the webinar. Have a wonderful day.